What is going on, kid family? Welcome back to the channel. On today's video, we are still working on the GM Ecotec L61 motor right here. And on the last video, you saw me starting to take the bottom end apart, and right now we're going to be taking out the whole crankshaft assembly here that holds everything down. We're going to remove that, and there is a specific torque and removal sequence, so we're going to be doing that right now. I'll show you all the details, and we'll see what the hell is going on with this motor, if there's anything wrong with this motor. I don't know. First impressions, just look at it. It looks toasty. As you can see, they're on there. Oh, she's steaming. You see how easy some of them come out compared to others? Wonder why. Alright, that's a wrap. Harbor Freight, baby. Took some abuse, but it did the job. So at this point, there's still bolts on the outside, and those are 13 mil bolts. That's what we're gonna take off right now. Alright, I like to stay organized here, so kind of keeping tabs of where these bolts go so they can go back to the appropriate spots. But by the book, if you're doing this, these bolts need to get replaced. Actually, there's a lot of bolts that need to get replaced on this motor because they stretch, and technically you should not reuse them, but if you're cheap, you ghetto, you could reuse them, but you do risk the chances of things not being in spec. So head bolts need to get replaced. Crankshaft, crankcase bolts need to get replaced. Like you can see, I'm just saving them right now. But again, like I said, if you want things to work, if you're building a performance motor, don't cheap out on some bolts. Get some APR bolts, get some good stuff. Definitely get a nice torque wrench. Like you guys seen, I was trying to torque the head caps, camshaft caps. And yeah, a low reading torque wrench that's cheap is no good for anyone. So try to avoid that at all costs. I'll tell you what, it's not easy. Not easy at all. There's not a lot of prying areas. Go. Let's go, buddy. Try to lift it straight up. There it goes. Ladies and gentlemen, we're in the heart of the beast. Y'all can see the bearings right here. We'll check those out in a second. oil coming out. Alright guys, well this is the cover for the crank. I'm just gonna wipe down the bearings so we can see how the bearings are doing, how they are holding up. And again, I'm sure this is just regular oil that's being used here, judging by how bad this block is and how dirty she is. I can already see some wear right on this bearing. You can see that line right there. And I do see an imprint right here on this bearing. It's not going alongside the whole bearing, it's in the middle of the bearing. I'm not sure if you guys will be able to pick that up, but I'm really surprised how thin these bearings are right over here. I'm not sure if this is the whole bearing. I don't know. I gotta work my way around and see if this whole thing comes out. It kind of looks like the whole thing is a bearing. Alright, not too bad. Again, aside from this wear right here and aside from that line, they look okay to me. And this one, it's still smooth to the fingernail through the glove, so that's a good thing as well. Alright, I wish I could take this whole block out and it'll be easier for you guys to see everything in the daylight, but unfortunately it's a lot of work. It's a heavy block. I don't have a engine stand or nothing like that, and the garage lights, that's all I can come up with for you guys. And you know what, it'll have to do. But so far everything looks pretty good, guys. I'm not gonna lie. The bearing surfaces, the actual crankshaft, it looks pretty clean. Let me just wipe some of this off, and that way we can kind of check it out. But it doesn't look bad at all, which is very surprising. And I'm kind of curious why this engine was abandoned. There she is, pretty darn clean for the most part. I'm not seeing any crazy wear or anything like that. So at this point we can probably start knocking out the rods, because the rods are attached to the crankshaft. We can knock out the rods, push them out from the other side, and then we can lift this whole crankshaft up and out of the block, which is the biggest thing right here. Once we get the crankshaft out, it's just a bare block at that point. And then we'll probably have to buy a pressure washer, because I'm tired of going to Bullet's garage to use his pressure washer for all sorts of things. We used his pressure washer for the head and whatnot, the oil pump. And you know what, I think it's something we just need to invest in, because I know this block is going to be very time consuming to clean, but we'll see. So let's go ahead, finish up, take the rod caps off here one by one. I might have to turn the engine on the side so that way I can push out the rods, or the pistons and the rods, from the opposite end. I also need to get organized, so I need to get a box, organize which piston is which piston. Again, this is going to be cylinder 1, 2, 3, 4. We need to stay organized, so let's do that, and I'll be back in a second. Alright, so the rod cap bolts are an 11 mil. Let's just loosen these up a little bit. Surprisingly, everything's going easy and the caps just come right off, as you can see. I thought I'd have a hard time trying to get the caps off, but looks okay. Now, I'm not sure if using a impact gun is the best thing for delicate pieces like this, but let me know in the comments below. Alright, let's take this cap off here. Again, what you guys are seeing is me doing everything for the first time right here. Comes right off. Ooh, that bearing does not look good. I don't even know if they're... Oh, okay. Never mind, guys. The bearing's right here. Let's put that bearing back in. Okay. So what we saw previously was just the bottom of the cap, not the bearing. And bearing looks good. Bearing looks good. Correction. So one thing I gotta make sure is which direction these things are in. Make sure they're not in the wrong order when I put them back together. And from the top of my head, I'll tell you the direction you got to put them in. It looks like on one side there's numbers. This one has 151. Here it says 157. So all these have numbers. The opposite ends of the caps are blank. So that's the way you know how to put them in the correct orientation. So at this point, this piston is loose right now, and I'm going to try to pop it out from underneath the motor. So I got to kind of finesse it, because again, the crankshaft caps are not in, and I don't want to turn the motor sideways because we can risk maybe these things falling out. Alright boys, let's get these pistons out of here. Starting with piston number 2. There he goes. Would you look at that? Well, I'll be damned. Would you look at that, boys? We got ourselves a tiny little piston. This thing is so small. The rod is so small. Dang. That's what you get for an economy engine. But again, the bearing looks pretty darn good. Not a lot of wear. The piston is moving on the wrist pin, no problem. There is a lot of corrosion and sediment buildup by the rings right here, but the rings are already moving. Like, look, you could see the rings moving already. So that's a very, very good sign. Another one bite the dust. Looking good. Yeah, so like I mentioned before my memory card got full, like the rings and everything, I don't see anything broken. Everything is moving, so I'm liking it. Alright guys, well, all the pistons are out. I flipped the motor over. At this point, the only thing to take off is the actual crankshaft here. So I'm just gonna go ahead and lift it up. Nothing is holding it according to my calculations, so let's go. Wonder if I gotta take this crank seal off. Okay, well that's off. Rear main seal is off. Oh, we got it off, boys. That's it. That is it. Let's set this down here. And I'm proud to say, ladies and gentlemen, if you guys are watching, I'm proud to say we knocked this out of the ballpark. Everything went pretty dang smooth. Cylinder walls right now looking pretty good. The bearings, the surfaces looking pretty dang good. So I'm pretty pleased, man. Aside from all this dirt and debris on this motor that you guys can see right there, that's okay, we'll clean that up. But it doesn't seem like this motor had any real big issues as far as rod knock, worn bearings, spun bearings, things of that sort that I've heard over the years. And so pretty good, pretty happy. Just cleaning off these bearing surfaces here. And at first glance, these look pretty darn good, man. Pretty darn good. Alright guys, as you can see, we got the engine apart all over the garage, guys. This is the bare bone block right over here, as you can see. Took it apart. Now that it's all apart, it's a lot less weight to manage. I'm going to be looking at the cylinder bores here, and again, just glancing at them, I don't see anything wrong. I don't see scarring, I don't see cracked sleeves and whatnot. So everything looks good. The bearings on this side look pretty dang good. No complaints. All the pistons are out. Again, I just gotta keep track of everything, how it goes, whether it goes in the block like this or like this. I gotta figure that out just so later I know how to reinstall everything. Very happy all overall. Again, here's the whole crankshaft caps in this whole girdle, or whatever you want to call it. And then you got the crankshaft here again, which everything looks pretty clean on the crankshaft as well. Not noticing any scarring or anything like that. So overall, the bottom end probably will work. And again, which probably leads me to believe the main problem here with this motor possibly was a bad head gasket or some kind of timing issues. But all the pistons look good just from first glance. Again, once we clean them off, we'll be able to really see whether there was any issues with the pistons interfering with the valves, which again, I don't think that's the case, because the valves looked pretty clean when I was cleaning them up and there was no issues with the valves. So I don't know, I'm not a mechanic, do it yourselfer here at best, just trying to learn more and more about engines. That way maybe when this channel starts really taking off one day in the future, we'll be doing builds, turbo builds, high horsepower builds ourselves here. And again guys, I'm no one special. I'm doing this thing out of a one-car garage, no lift, no engine stand, no nothing, just some motivation, just the will to do things, learn things, make some mistakes. Again, I've been trying to learn for a while. Even growing up, I bought 2 Honda motors that I tried to take apart, but this is the first motor that's actually in decent condition and that I was able to completely take apart like this. Again, I've had issues with other motors where it was either hydro locked, couldn't get the oil pan off and whatnot, but this is good. I'm really happy with where we are right now, guys. So anyway, I'm gonna go ahead, just fine-tune things, look at things in detail, try to clean it up just a little bit right now. Eventually, like I said, we need a pressure washer to clean everything out. And yeah, it's gonna be interesting. I also do want to do some measurements here, maybe a plastic gauge measurement, dowel bore gauge, I don't know. We'll see how much we can invest in this and how much of a return we can get. But anyway, guys, thanks for watching. Stay tuned for more videos. Subscribe to the channel to see this content, and I'll catch you on the next one.
I ain't here for the money, I ain't here for the fame. Though it might be nice to own a jet plane, I'ma do it all for you. Come along and see us.